G'day guys, welcome back to another episode. In this episode, I'm going to talk about this personal chopper project that I'm getting started on. I've had these ideas floating around in my head for years now, and I've been collecting parts ever since, and I'm finally getting started on this thing. So in this episode, we're going to go through, map out this funky frame here that I've got drawn up. I'm going to talk about where I drew inspiration from. We're going to draw it up so that when I come through and fabricate this frame, we don't waste a bunch of material. The other thing I'm going to talk about is this twin front headed Evo. So this will be the power plant for this chopper. So basically both exhausts will be coming out the front of the heads, and both carburetors, this will be a twin carby deal, they'll be both coming out the rear of these cylinders. So if that's something you're interested in, stick around. So where to start on this one? This one is a personal project of my own. So a lot of people have been asking about the Howard that I've got in the background here somewhere. I am getting to that. That frame that you saw me finish, that pre-war thing, that was my buddy John Parker's. And I did that as a love job for him because he's going to help me balance and weight and all the bottom end for that Howard thing and put it all together. So I needed to finish that job before I could, go ahead with that project, because I really need his help putting that bottom end together. Because it's got some weird and funky stuff going on. I had to retrofit some later model bearings into an earlier bottom end and do some weird bits and bobs. I want him to help me set that up and balance it. So I am getting to that Howard. That is another personal project, but this is just another one. I do all these customer jobs and I just have all these ideas floating around in my head. And that's why I have like 5 projects on the go at once. I've just got so many ideas that I'm trying to, put into bikes and stuff that customers aren't really digging, which I think would be awesome. So these are all just projects that are going to be my own that I'll probably never sell, but they're just going to be something sweet that I'll have, sitting in my house for the rest of my life and just sit around and be just sort of, this is going to be probably a bit more of a show bike, but I'll get to this thing in a second. So, as I said, I pick up a lot of inspiration from different places. I'll see a bike here, I'll see a little thing on it that I like, and then all the rest of it I don't really like. So it's just like a heap of little things I'm trying to put together to sort of achieve the bike that I'm looking for. So this is going to be one of those bikes that I've had floating around my head for a long time. I saw this bike, it's a Jesse James bike. Just want to start off saying I'm not going to copy it. It's not a copy at all. I'm just drawing inspiration from it. I really like the frame lines and all that sort of stuff. Like, I won't copy it completely, but it'll be pretty, not close, but just the same sort of style, and I'll have a different front end and all different power plant and stuff, obviously. So, as I said, drawing inspiration from different places. But this bike I want to build is going to be a few different ideas that I've had for a while now. And that is starting with this Evo here, this being the power plant for this bike. I did have ideas to put that pan that you see behind me in it, but I sort of want to build like a more original sort of frame for that engine, because I actually want to do some Ks with it. I want to ride that thing around Australia and do all sorts of stuff in it. So thinking I might keep the pan just because it's a more expensive thing, and I feel like it deserves to be. I've got like basically a whole rigid pan parts there, so I think I'll just put that engine in like a pan bike, and I want to do a full custom engine for this fully custom frame that I'm doing. So we'll start talking about the engine, and then I will get to what frame I was talking about, what Jesse James bike that is. So this engine, I'm not sure if a few of you have worked it out already, but there is something funky going on with this engine. As you can see, this engine has 2 front heads on it. So I'm not saying I'm the first one to do this, hundreds of people have done it, but I'm going to put 2 front heads on this Evo. So basically what I want to do, it's sort of like an XR 1000 or 750 like Sportster sort of inspiration from that bike. That bike has 2 Delorto carburetors coming out the rear side of both heads because they're 2 front heads. So a normal Evo configuration will have both these ports pointing to the middle and then a carburetor in the middle of the cylinders, where because I've used two front heads, both intakes are now on the rear of the heads. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have two Delortos hanging back, so they'll both be pointing in the back direction out of these heads, just like an XR750 or 1000 Sportster. So it'll be two carburetors pointing back, and then of course it's both exhaust pointing forward. So another idea I've had for an exhaust, I want to do like two nice big sweeping pipes out of there that both meet underneath the cone here. And that's where it is really going to mesh nicely with this frame that I want to build. But I'll show you that in a sec. So basically the hardest thing about doing a two front headed Evo or any engine is obviously these engines drain their oil back from the heads through the cylinders. So something that I had to do for this head, I had to drill an extra oil drain, because the oil drain is usually at the front. Like this head, it's in the front here because all the oil will rush to the front of the head and then drain back down. So I had to drill the oil port in the back of this head so that it'll drain back. And the other annoying thing you got to do, actually two annoying things. The other annoying thing you got to do, you've got to move your push rod locations, because these are now swapped around. So I've got to drill my new push rod holes, and I've got to drill the holes that will accept the covers and all that sort of stuff, push rod tubes. So that's one of the annoying jobs. And then the most annoying job is the camshaft. So because I'm moving these around, so I'm moving the intake push rod and changing it to an exhaust push rod, and vice versa, it means I have to do the same with the lobes in the camshaft. So I think I've got a camshaft floating around here. I can give you a little demonstration what I mean. So this is a stock camshaft. I'm pretty sure it's out of like a shovel. But basically where this camshaft sits in here, so the two lobes I'm looking at, I have to swap them around because they're doing the opposite job now. So the exhaust lobe, which would have been this one, is now the intake lobe, and the intake lobe is now the exhaust lobe. So I've got to swap these lobes around. Now, I gave that to a cam shop probably a year ago now to do that job for me, but they stuffed me around for a year straight, gaslit me, told me they were doing this job for me, never did it. So Andrew's Cams will custom grind you a camshaft in the States, but it's like $1,400 minimum charge. So it could be more than that. So because of what I do on this channel, I'm trying to do everything myself to save costs and everything. I'm going to grind one of these cams myself, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to make a little jig. I'm going to weld this camshaft up, and I'm going to re-grind it with new lobes in the right position so that this engine will run correctly. So that brings me to my next point on this project. I want to make this project like a huge series. Maybe it's like 20, 30, 40 episodes. I don't know yet. I'm just going to go even more in depth on this project than what I usually do on my other builds, just because it's a personal one. I'm going to have heaps of funky stuff going on in there. The frame's going to be funky, the engine's going to be funky, how I'm going to grind this camshaft's going to be funky. There's going to be heaps of weird and wonderful things on this bike that I want to document. So I'm going to try and make the videos more of like a half an hour video rather than the hour ones that I've been doing, because people get bored and don't watch them. So basically in this episode, all I want to do, I want to get together what shape I'm going to do for this frame. As I said, I have a basic idea of what I want, but you need to put it into proportion like this and work out what you want to build before you get started. You can't just go bending something and hope that it's going to work or get in the right spot, or you sort of got to nut it out. You've got to get the right proportions. You've got to make the thing look right. You've got to make sure everything will work, and then you can start joining the pieces with tubes and making stuff work. So the way I'm going to do that, firstly, I want to bring in here, I've got a few printouts of this frame that I've been talking about. It is a Jesse James frame, as I said. So let me grab this. I will show you these photos that I've got. So this is basically what I have in mind. As I said, this is a Jesse James bike. I've watched something on it. I'm fairly sure he found this frame at Long Beach Swap, so it's not even technically his frame. This is just the bike he built out of it. So as I said, I'm just going to use this as inspiration. So you see how it has all these nice swoops in it. The thing basically has no straight sections in it. So it has big curve in the backbone. You know, it has this nice S through here, which I'm really into. And then this part here is basically the only straight part in the whole frame. So originally I wanted to make this frame completely curved, like have absolutely no flat straights in it, but I think it needs this here, otherwise it'll do a weird bubble and it'll look stupid. So I think I'm gonna keep this straight section here, but I'm not gonna go this wild. Like this is probably like a 20 over front end or something. This is a Harman front end also, internally sprung Springer. Super cool. Anyway, this is a little bit larger than I want. Like this is probably 10 to 12 inches up in the neck, and this is just by guessing, I would say this is like 38-degree rake in this. So I'm not really into that. I want this bike to be more of a rider. So I'm gonna ride this thing around a bit more. Not that I'm saying you couldn't ride this, but in Australia, the cops would take you home and have a night with you if you were riding this on the road. So I'm gonna make this a little bit different. So if you're in the same situation as me, wanting to build a wild bike like this and you're sort of stuck where to start, this is sort of where I start. I start with inspiration photos here. This is what I want to draw out of these bikes. These are parts that I want, this, that, and this. And then we're going to put them all together and work it out. So basically on this frame I want to build, I want to change this from say 10 or 12 or whatever that is. And I want to sort of go 4 up or something. I don't want to, because I want to run like, I've got a front end for this already. I'm not sure if it's going to work, but I've got one. It is like a 6 to 8 over WLA Springer. So I'm sort of trying to make that work, but if I can't make the lines work, I'm just gonna have to get a new front end or make one. So this is my little handy little jig here. So I have different marks. Like this is knuckle, and then I've got pan a little bit further up here. And at the moment I am 4 inches over stock. So this is 4 inches up from a pan, and that is 34 degrees of rake. As I said, I didn't want to go like 38 or 40, whatever this is. I want to keep the rake down so I can have a shorter front end, bring that wheel back in a bit, but still have sort of this nice S with the neck a bit lower. And the problem with bringing the neck lower is that this curve gets a little bit less. So I know that already because I'm not sure if I'll use these axle plates yet. These are just the ones that I make. But this is just to get me started to see where I'm at. And basically, we want to achieve a bit of a bend in this backbone like this. So the way I do that, I just get my little tube here. This is obviously just straight. So I know if this works, I know we got to go a bit further. So that is sort of perfectly straight through there, which tells me the neck will probably have to change. So I'm going to put this back in here so I can see me a bit better. So as I said, I think this neck is going to have to change. Because we don't have that swoop in the backbone like I was saying, like that's straight now. Like I want to have a bit of a bend in this. So I've got this engine sitting in stock location already, and I've got the axle plates 4 inches back. The reason I've moved the axle plates 4 inches back, because if they were closer, that would change this angle. So they'd have to come in sharper. So I'm trying to push them away so that I can get more length to get a swoop in there. But because I've only gone 4 inches up here, and that's why he would have gone 10 or 12 inches in the neck, is because you need to get that higher so that you can pull this bend into it. So I think what I'm going to do, like I said, this is 34 degrees. So I think I want to go another 2 inches up in the neck and maybe take 2 degrees out of it. So I want a little bit of rake there just because I think it'd look odd if the front end is like sort of sucked in with such a large frame. Not saying that I hate that sort of style where it's like fucking 12 up with like a 30-degree rake, but I'm not sort of going for the tough guy. I want to go for more like the chopper long bike look, but I want it not that long. So what I think I'll do here, I want to go up 2 inches, like I said, and take 2 degrees of rake out, and then we will see how this sort of lines up. By bringing the motor forward, it's going to make it better too, because it's going to have more clearance under this rear head. I've also lowered the motor a bit and turned it a bit. So, because this is a custom frame, I can do whatever I want. So I've angled the motor a bit more so that this pipe is perfectly in line with the head, so I've got the most clearance, so I can get the most bend through there. And then I've pulled it forward as well, because pulling this forward will give you more angle in the back, more room in the back of it. So, like I said, I'm going to go through and change this, sort of work out what I need, and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to sort of roughly draw this thing out to get proportions and have a look at it on a bit of paper before we get started and make sure it's exactly what we want. Alright, so I pretty well got this pretty well sorted out how I want it to be. I had to do a few other bits and pieces. I raised my axle plates by 1 inch, so that's going to make the frame a bit lower, which is going to give me, well, basically it makes the engine a bit lower. It brings the axle plate and the neck up a bit, so I've got more room above the head, because I need to, obviously, that's sort of where that's going to live. That'll live somewhere there. That'll probably go up a little bit. But I need this space here because I'm going to have a bend in this. So my bend's not going to be as dramatic as Jesse James's one, but I want mine, so that's like just under 2 inches under there. So I'm going to have sort of 2 inches there. He looks like he's got maybe 4+ inches, 4 or 5 inches. So mine's about half what his will be, which is fine. So that's going to have a nice little bend through there. So I ended up going 4 inch over stock. So this is 4 inches up from stock, and I went 32 degrees. I did a bit of measuring where I think this front end that I bought is going to be. I haven't got it yet, otherwise I'd measure it and show you. I had a bit of a guess where I think it's going to be. You can do a bit of a measure from this and work out height off the table and get a pretty rough measurement, but I think I'll be pretty close there. I'm just going to tackle this together, and then I'm obviously going to make it a roller just to make sure it has the right stance that I want. But this is basically a good start. So axle plates are up 1 inch. This was up another 2 inches, and it is 4 inches of stretch. So I've got 4 inches of stretch here. My engine is in the same spot. So there'll be like a 4 inch, like bit 4 inch longer here, which I don't like the look of, but I think I'll be able to fix it up with a few little bits and pieces. But that is pretty well where I want stuff to live for now. But what I want to do now is I've got some butcher's paper and I want to draw this frame. So I'm going to set the butcher's paper up here somewhere. I'm going to stand back where you are, and I'm going to draw this frame up here where I want it. So the beauty of having the butcher's paper behind here, I can mark in all the axle plates, I can mark in where the engine's going to be, and I can mark where the neck's going to be. And then all I'm going to do, I'm going to either bend a bit of TIG wire or something else. I'm going to get the right radius and then draw the radius in. So through here, it's going to come up and then do a bit of a swoop here. That's exaggerated, but it'll sort of come out past the engine a bit and swoop back in and then tuck in here. And then this bit's obviously just going to have a nice gradual bend through it. So I'm going to set my butcher's paper up like we just spoke about, and then we'll do some drawing, eh? Something that I'm terrible at, by the way. So this is only like a rough sort of a sketch just to get the look of it so we know what it's going to look like, and then we know if we're on the right track or not. So let's give it a look and see what we're doing. Alright, so this is sort of what I had in mind. So I just got some regular old butcher's paper, just like a roll of it. And I've just taped it up here as like a backboard for this thing. And this is just so I can sort of get an idea of where things lay. Like I can just come here, I can mark this. So this is obviously my neck, my stem location. So I'm just going to do that. So like that. So that's my stem location. So I'm just going to mark that. I'm going to take this down once I have sort of marked where the things go, and then I'll draw between them. But for now, that is stem location like that. And then I'm going to draw in where the heads like sort of finish. That's all I'm going to go for the detail, just so I know sort of where the line can come through. I'll probably just do the front and rear head so we get an idea of where it is. I might mark on the table sort of where it lives. I think that's pretty well, the bottom of that paper is sort of where the bottom of the frame is going to live. Maybe a little bit higher, but that's pretty close. And then the axle plate, I'll mark that as well. A little easy way you can do that, you'll probably see in the time lapse here. I'm just going to get my torch and shine a light at it, and that's going to give me a silhouette, and then I'm going to mark the silhouette out. It's going to be close enough. Like I said, I just want to get an idea of the shape of the frame and sort of make sure the proportions are right, make sure it's how I want it to look before we start making the actual thing. Because if I draw this frame and I don't like something, I can always come through, you know, move the stem a bit more, can move the engine back or forward to change the, you know, the back swoop. I can change the axle plate location. Like, I'm drawing this just to make sure the proportions are right. So I might draw this 2 or 3 times yet, I don't know yet. So I'm going to go through, I'll just time lapse this, I'll draw this, I'll mark it out and draw it up, and then we'll come back when the thing's done. Alright, so I pretty well have this thing drawn out now. It's not exactly how I want it. It's pretty close. I've got a couple marks here. I'm not sure if you can see them, where I would rather the tube to be. You saw in the little time lapse, I drew it so it came into the bottom of the neck here just to see what it looked like. But made this bit super tight and I think it looked like shit. Better when this tube comes up and meets the bottom of your backbone here, and then I'm going to have some pretty cool gussets in there that's going to join all that together. I think I'm going to have this frame pretty molded too, so I'm going to have this all molded, like all that nice and molded. Thinking about molding a tank for this as well, maybe molding an oil bag. I'm going to have to make an oil bag for this just because it's going to be a weird shape. I didn't draw this down tube in at the back because I'm not sure where that's going to be yet, because like I said, the rear axle plates are 4 inches stretched, and I hate that look where, you know, the gearbox is in the same spot and everything's in the same spot. You've got like this big gap at the back here before your rear guard. I think that looks like shit, so I might do something funky and see if I can move the gearbox back a bit to try and take up some of that weird space in there. So I might make this down tube, the back bent, just to make it look a bit more correct with the frame. So I think I'm going to pull this off. I'm going to draw this again. I'm just going to lay this on the ground. I'm going to trace majority of it because I like all of it from like here to there. I like this, I like that. I just getting this S at the front right is going to be tricky. So I mark this down here so that it's a bit closer to the front engine mount, because I'm going to have to run some plate across there to pick up this front engine mount. So if the tube, you know, comes straight through the bottom here near it, it's going to make my life much easier. So it's easier to make the tube suit the engine than the other way around. So I'm just going to redraw that a bit further in there, try and make this, I want to get rid of this big bump in the front. It looks like a big gut, big beer gut like mine. So try try and get rid of that, make it a bit tighter through here and a nicer S. So probably have to get a bit tighter down there, but it is what it is. So I'm going to rip this off, I'm going to redraw it, and then I don't think I need to time lapse that. You've already seen it. I'll just come back and we'll see how it looks then. Right, so I've redrawn this thing. A few things that I changed. I changed the angle of the rear axle plate. So instead of being perfectly horizontal, I've just kicked it a bit, which doesn't matter at all because it's still going to adjust the wheel the same way and everything. But that made all my little tubes here line up properly. So that is the angle that I'm going to run my axle plates on. So that's all pretty sorted. And as you can see, I've got this much nicer. It's got like a nice sweep in it now. It doesn't have like a big, like a really notchy sort of S in it. It's got a nice gradual S in it. And this rear bit sort of got it even more rounded because, as I said, I moved that axle plate a bit. And I just wanted to get a sort of a visual on that sort of down tube there. I think when I roll, because obviously I'm going to roll these pipes because there's no way to get a bender big enough to do this. So I've got to roll this in a little machine that I just bought. So when I roll this backbone, I'm going to use the same radius as that to do this down tube. I figure everything else is bent, why do a straight down tube? So I think that looks pretty cool on that little angle there. So that down tube will be something like that. As I said, the gearbox is going to live in here a bit. I might have to lift it a bit because of the angle that this thing is, which doesn't matter because as long as you've got, I might just buy like the longest belt because I'll probably just run a belt drive on this thing because they're so easy and you don't have to worry about oiling a chain. I might just get the longest belt I can and then I'll just put the gearbox in the middle of its adjustment and then I can move it up and down or back and forth and put it where it needs to live and then make mounts that way. Like I said, if you're making this frame from scratch, you might as well make it around parts that are easy to buy. It's going to be way harder to try and make this frame and then try and find a belt that fits it, Buy your belt and everything first and then put it all in there and make the frame suit your belt and stuff. It's way easier. So that is pretty well it for this episode. I just wanted to get together, talk about this project. I want to map it out, show you what I've got in mind for the frame for this thing. I have bought a front end for this. It's like, I think I've spoken about it, an 8/over or something WL Springer. So I'm waiting to get that so I can do a bit of measurement and absolutely make sure this is going to be right before I make it. If the spring is long enough, I would like to go up in the neck a bit more so that we can get more bend in here. But I'm just going conservative for now in case the springer is sort of just long enough to make this happen because this is probably the least amount of height you can put in the neck and still get a nice bow in the backbone like that because that's really the look we're going for. So thanks for watching this one. As I said, it's going to be a big series. Please stick around, have a look at them, keep up to date with them, and hopefully you're just as excited on this project as I am. So I'll see you on the next one.